My name is Jonathan Gorst. I've been working in the area of retail returns now for about 14 years, something like that. So what I'm going to talk about today, I think it's one of those sometimes, you know when you get asked to do a presentation at an event, and you tell them what you're going to talk about, and you think that'll be a really good topic because the work will have developed that far by then. Unfortunately, I think I probably overpromised. The work hasn't developed quite as fast. So today's talk is a bit of a work in progress in terms of the current research that I'm involved with, but hopefully, nevertheless, you'll still find it interesting. So I've just got a very brief part to look at the background. And that agenda is completely wrong for the presentation, but hopefully the presentation is correct behind it. We just had a few technical problems getting my presentation. I actually changed the slide last night, but I changed it on my stick. The stick was corrupted and can't be used. So I will talk about something, and hopefully we'll get there. I work as part of a cross-university research team. So I'm working with colleagues from Cranfield University and the University of Sheffield. Like I said, we've been working together now since about 2004, 2003. Working together on this work. We initially set off when we were Department for Transport funded, who were interested in minimising road miles that were starting to be experienced by products being returned, or reverse logistics generally. So we had some money to work on that in terms of trying to find out how we could make more efficiencies. So if we look at sales and supply chains going forward, when we look at forward logistics, it's very slick. We get nice warehousing, we get nice racking, everything's laid out in a very consistent manner. We know where everything is. We get to returns, and sometimes it's not quite so slick. These were pictures that we used quite a few years ago, and in some instances, they still look like this. Different products coming through. I'd just like to point out this bottom one. It isn't Halfords. There's lots of bikes in there. And the reason I say that is we've done a lot of work with in the past with Halfords, and it's not Halfords. They're pretty good on bikes because they fix them, so that they take their problems out. But as you see, we start to get a mess. We get non-standard boxes on non-standard pallet sizes. We even get boxes. You've got a Walker's Crisp box up there. They're not even coming back in what it went out in. And so it can be quite misleading and quite difficult to know what we've got. So what we were seeing when we started this work in 2004, returns of above 30% were common in certain areas. There was indications of poor return management process, and there was an impact on sustainable distribution. I don't think a lot's changed, to be honest. The numbers might have got bigger. We've seen some of the returns rates with the advent of Omni Channel and the like, that those numbers are even bigger in the amount of returns come back. You buy one, so you buy three, and three different sizes, that sort of scenario. Over the years, different estimates have been made about the size of the work, size of the problem. This was a piece of work I was involved in, but I was a lot younger then, that's why I didn't get my name on the paper. My colleagues, Burnham and Cullen, estimated it was costing the UK economy £5.75 billion in returns, but that's back in 2004. And obviously since 2004, we've had the advent of online shopping and everything else that goes with that. I was looking up some figures the other day just in preparation for this, and in the US, the National Retail Federation reckon it's costing the US economy $260 billion. So, as a good academic who likes robust processes, my back of the fag packet calculation for what that might mean to the UK, based on the size of our economies, I worked it out to £33.5 billion is what the returns are costing the UK. Now, please don't quote me on that, because that is literally the back of a fag packet. There's no robustness in there at all, but it's as good a number as anything else. Depending on your experiences, and my experience is only anecdotal, but your experiences might tell you there's more returns in the US or there's less. Anecdotally, we're starting to find that companies are saying that in the US, retailers have been stricter in terms of returns and not as liberal as the UK. So my $33.5 billion could well be quite conservative. But whichever way we want to look at it, it's quite a size in monetary terms. And after all, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and we're soon starting to talk about some serious change. And what could we do with that money? Globally, then as well, the Market Watch is saying that it's costing the global economy $0.6 trillion. So the core themes of the work that we've been involved in the past and ongoing into the future, we've been looking at avoidance, returns management, and product dispositioning. Obviously, if we can avoid a product coming back in the first place, we've not got an issue to deal with. You know, it's the old adage, sell it and keep it sold. But unfortunately, that doesn't always work, does it? We're in a society where we want to be able to buy something, we want to be able to return it conveniently and quickly. So that then takes us into the returns management side. You know, how can we be more effective in how we manage our returns? How can we make sure that we've got slick systems, that we fetch the product in, we process it, and we get it back onto the shelf with maximum product recovery values? And then the final bit is, if that's not working, or we've got a product that just isn't saleable, how do we deal with it? So then we look at the product dispositioning routes, and how can we get it out of our supply chain and make it somebody else's problem? Sorry, how can we maximize the recovery from that particular item by getting some money back on that product? So different challenges that we're coming through. As a good retailer, we all want to provide good customer service. Why wouldn't we? And sometimes I think we almost get this challenge between the two. Good customer service and product returns don't necessarily go together, especially if we're wanting to make sure that our policies that we have in place are fully implemented and are fully adhered to. No, sir, I won't take that product back. That's not exactly coming with good customer service. I think one of the other challenges is differentiating between what a customer needs and what a customer wants. A customer will want the world. Can we provide that? Do we want to provide that? Do we understand the costs by delivery channel? One of the things I should have mentioned at the beginning is one of my colleagues from the University of Sheffield, he's actually an accountant by profession. We still talk to him, but he's an accountant by profession. So he really gets interested in the actual costs and how companies are costing up. And what we find is that when we talk to retailers, the information about returns is held in lots of different places. Nobody has a true picture on what is actually happening. Nobody knows. This is big general statements, by the way, some retailers do, but nobody knows what it's costing to return things online, what it's costing to return things through the click and collect channel. Nobody's looking at what it's costing to return things in store. We don't necessarily have these figures. It's just product coming back and we just deal with it. And so one of the questions that then comes up is, should different distribution channels be subsidizing other channels? Do we even know if other channels are subsidizing? We know from talking to some retailers that that is the case. And that it's possible because you return it to store, the product was sold online, but the refund comes from the store. So it comes off the store's P&L account rather than the online P&L account. And I suppose the other thing then is, what is the competition doing? Are we a leader or a follower? How do we want to pursue in our actions? And if we open this up a little bit, we talk about free delivery. How many of you here will only buy if it's free delivery? How many people look to see what the options are in terms of the returns and will only purchase if the return can be free as well? So a quotation from Mark Miller a couple of years ago was, "Free returns is insanity." Where is all that cost going? It wasn't very complimentary on free delivery in the first place either. But if as a retailer we stop our free delivery, do we cut our sales in the first place? Time slots. I took the day off work and it never came. Or the example that we were given earlier from John Lewis, your parcel arrived at 6:30. Unfortunately, you arrived home at 25 to 7. Tough. Now I have to go and collect it. All the challenges that might bring. Choice of delivery route. Do we want to pick which delivery company that we use? Do we have, as a customer, do we have loyalty to a particular delivery organisation, or is our loyalty with the retailer that we buy it from in the first place, and we trust them to get it to us in a usable fashion, in a reasonable timescale? And I suppose, what about the long-term sustainability for all of these different types of organisation, for the retailers, the 3PLs, or the courier companies that are actually doing the deliveries? The work that we were originally funded to do a few years ago was to look at a reverse logistics toolkit so that companies could try and assess where their issues were within their returns processes. We delivered that project, we felt quite successfully. It was used by a number of different companies around the country. But what we decided then was, because that was published back in 2006, something like that, it was probably time to revisit it and refresh that work. And obviously since that time, we've got the boom in online sales, we've got multi-channel, omni-channel, whatever channel we might want in terms of our purchasing. So the piece of work that we're undertaking at the moment is to revisit that the reverse logistics toolkit and see how it can be improved, see what it can be improved, but more importantly, add in the bits that are missing, add in the elements of omnichannel and the effects that omnichannels are having on returns. And what we've done is we've been working with a group of companies, a group of retailers, some 3PLs, and some other interested parties. And they fetched up a number of different items that they were interested in looking at further. I'm just going to talk about 4 of them today. So we're going to look at omnichannel, value proposition, the role of the return, and blimey, I think I picked up the wrong teeth this morning. We're going to look at the role of the returns manager and technology and data. So if we look at omnichannel first, as you can imagine, there's lots of different conversations ongoing. I'm sure you could all have that conversation with me as well in terms of the challenges that you face from an omnichannel perspective. But some of the things that we're starting to see, and well, not starting to see, some of the things that are coming out of those discussions are things like retailers are integrating channels, processes, and systems. But then we also get the flip side to that is, but legacy systems are still causing problems. Our different systems for our different channels don't necessarily talk to each other. The people don't necessarily talk to each other. They can be run out of different buildings. Those conversations aren't taking place. Data management is still a huge issue. Do we know what our customers are buying? Do we know what a good customer looks like? And have we actually done the analysis to take that forward, that while they may be a good customer in terms of when you look what they purchase, do we actually look at their net value to us and we take off how much they return as well? And again, we've been doing some work with some companies that have started to get into that sort of analysis and be able to break down what a good customer might look like. And while a good customer might look like they buy an awful lot, they may return the vast majority of it. So what is their value to us? Do we want those types of customers to deal with? We're finding that some customers do know the full cost of omnichannel returns. They know what the market erosion is on multiple times through the system. We know that returns rates can be quite high on apparel, but because of the margins involved in apparel and the relative simplicity with dealing with apparel, it's possible for it to be returned multiple times and still make a profit on that garment. However, for some other items, like whether electricals and electronics and homeware items, it's almost you get one bite at the cherry because the margin is so low to start with, if it comes back, it's starting to cost us money. There's nothing left in that product to take out. And the other thing then that we're starting to see and companies are starting to discuss with us is, in terms of returns management, are we considering the end-to-end processes, or is it just something that we have to deal with at the end of the supply chain? And I think lots of companies are still in that position that it's just something we deal with. It's not something that we necessarily plan as an overall strategy. Then move on to the value proposition. We get different expectations of different customers in different market segments. If it's a high fashion item, their expectations of a customer can be quite different to maybe something that's like electrical electronic. People that buy electrics and electronics online tend to have done a lot of market research. It's a higher ticket item that they're purchasing, so they know what they're after. They've quite possibly been into the shop and had a play with one first, and then their purchasing decision is purely made based on price, and they buy it online. Apparel, apparently, not that I buy much apparel online, as you can probably tell. Apparel, you're quite likely to buy a number of different items. You try them on. The changing room is the front room, or hopefully the bedroom. You try them on at home. See which size fit best. What does the colour look like? And then the item is either kept or returned, however it might be. The other thing as well is that we were finding is that depending on how you're dealing, whether it's B2C or B2B, different challenges can arise as well. And returns can come back through the B2B channel just as they can through the B2C. And what companies are starting to talk to us is they're finding that deeper relationships between suppliers and customers are now required. We need to have a greater understanding of each other's problems and how we're going to deal with them. A long time ago, I did a PhD. And one of the things I looked at was customer service and expectations within customer service. And one of the comments that we've had during this piece of research is that customer expectations should be managed. I once said that in a presentation a number of years ago, and I got savaged. Somebody actually stood up and said, you can't manage customer expectations. Now, I would disagree with that. I don't think it's a perfect science by any stretch. But I think we can be careful in how we manage a customer's expectations, and we don't raise the bar too far and then not be able to deliver it. Because it's about delivering time in, time out. We can't just do it today and tomorrow. We've got to do it forever once we raise that expectation bar. And one of the other things when we talk about the value proposition that we start to coming out is the social media. And some companies are now starting to find that social media is an inhibitor to retailers doing the right thing. A bad experience is shared extremely quickly. So a company changes its policy, everybody knows about it. And we're getting the impression that companies and retailers are scared stiff that they change their policy, and what will happen is that their customers will just switch to an alternative supplier. And they've lost that customer. Then move on to the role of the returns manager. I found a couple of pictures for this, and I bottled it on showing the other one. The other one said, I'm a returns manager because dumbass miracle worker isn't a legitimate job title. And I was talking to my colleagues beforehand, and the professor said I shouldn't use it. So I did bow to his better judgment. But returns manager, what does that title mean? If you talk to retailers and you talk to people who have the responsibility of returns manager within their organisation, it varies greatly in terms of what their job, their responsibility is. Some people might be running the returns centre and they get the title returns manager. Some people might report into logistics, some people report into supply chain, some people report into commercial. Some people have quite limited responsibilities, some people are almost involved from the full end supply chain, from marketing at one end, right through to disposal at the other, and have responsibilities and powers to be able to deal with that. The differences we're finding were huge. Granted, it might be the title, it might just be that we're looking at the wrong job title. But the challenges that are coming out from doing the role, companies are also telling us are incredibly large. And what we're trying to get to, and we're not there yet by any stretch, what is the correct line of seniority for a returns manager? Is that role treated with enough responsibility within the organisation? Or is it just somebody that does literally manage the returns? We get them in, we sort them out, and we get them back out the door again. Whether that's to be a repick, or whether that's out of the supply chain. And then finally, technology and data. Different companies have obviously got different levels of technology. Looking at real-time data capture, but equally, can we use that data in terms of big data? What are the different applications? I know there are different companies now that are specialising in helping companies interrogate the data that they currently hold. How can you get the most out of that data to make yourself more effective? Is information travelling from the customer to the carrier and back again? Do we know why do we know why deliveries are refused? And obviously, as we heard earlier in the John Lewis talk as well, we've got the smartphone and the capabilities that that brings and the added complexities that that brings as well. And I think what we're finding is that what we do drives behaviour. It's not a startling revelation. I'm sure you all knew that because we find that in all aspects of life. But we may change a policy because we want it to help our returns, but what it does is our customers change their behaviour and do something that causes us more problems. If you would like to take part in the research and you'd like to contact me, that will be great. We're just about to embark on a series of interviews with retailers around the country. If you'd like to be part of that, I printed it big, so if you wanted to take a photograph, you could get my email address down. We'd love to hear from you. If you want to grab my card afterwards, that will be good as well. There's not many people doing research into retail returns. There's one or two around the country, but there's not that many people. Whatever we find out, we then put back out to the industry. We get invited to speak at different events like this. So, and again, if you take part in the research, you would get a summary of that report as well. So if you'd like to take part and help us in that, that would be great. And please do get in touch. So in conclusion, it depends. My standard answer to students on most questions is it depends. Your particular industry, your particular market sector, all affects what you do in terms of your returns. For some, it's not as big a problem as for others. For some, the volumes are there, and you can set up a production line almost to cope with it. So apparel is a really good example of being able to treat it almost as a production line. The product comes in, it's unboxed, it can be inspected very quickly, it can be circulated and back out. For other items, that can be more of a challenge. You know, what if we get a 42-inch television back and there's no remote control in it? What do we do with it then? There are different challenges that become involved and different complexities in sorting out the problems. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jonathan. I think we have 5 minutes left, so if you are happy to take an occasional question, is there anybody on the floor who would like to ask Jonathan a question? We have a microphone that will come to you if you put your hand up. Oh, a couple. If you just introduce yourself so that the speaker knows to whom they are replying.
Yeah, Richard Horswell. I'm a consultant in distribution. I just wondered if you had any metrics, sort of KPIs for returns, the actual processing of returns, and how these companies are actually dealing with these things, you know, for best practice, really.
Not at the moment. We have had in the past, and we've worked with, but they're not up to date. We've worked with companies who would literally work out how much it costs for each stage of the process to the nearest penny. And what that did do then was it allowed them to focus those returns processes by shaving off, because they literally worked to the penny. And I think they started off, the overall returns process, when they initially started, was something like £1.20, and eventually got it down to something like 30-odd pence. Obviously, you can see quite a saving there, but they worked on making it small, manageable steps, easy to train people in what they're doing, and then being able to shave the pennies off. But like I said, that's from quite a while ago now. I've not got anything that's more up to date.
If my background was in the good old mail order days when the catalogues were, in a Grattan catalogue, a big book catalogue, returns rates were averaging 33%. You'd have 50% on some apparel, and the task was to get 98% of that stock back into good stock, or else you were going to lose money. So the challenges in doing it, and I suspect the modern omni-channel retailer who does not have the complexity or the ability to do the amount of reprocessing that we could do, the percentage of recovery will be significantly lower.
I would say most companies are probably 95% plus, I would guess, in terms of recovery.
Is there another question? I saw some other hands.
Hi, good morning. James Fitzgerald, e-cargo bikes just outside there. We also have a retail business where we retail electrically assisted bikes. Some of them cost 7,000 quid. We ship them all over the place, including, for example. But the return side is very complicated for us because they're expensive bits and pieces. Yeah. The margins are sort of 30 to 36%. But what I don't quite understand is what's going on in your enormous world here, where you're delivering billions of quid's worth of stuff a day, is why nobody seems to think, well, what about actually the legislation and the consumer rights and Section 78, which provides that the consumer is required to return the goods to the place where they bought it? Or is this all very different because they're online sales? Or are you just having to offer this free returns forever until we go bankrupt option because that's what everybody else is doing? And it's a question of just surviving long enough so your competitors are bankrupt and then you win.
I think there's a lot of that there. I often refer to it almost as it's who's going to blink first. And I think we've seen over the past few years, you get one of the major retailers changes their returns policy, and people get really nervous. And there's an example, it's a few years ago now, Marks & Spencer's changed their returns policy in terms of the number of days you could return something from a really large number to a large number, which basically brought them in line with the rest of the market. And straight away, their market share dipped. Sorry, not their share price dipped as a result of making that announcement. The reality to the customer is nil. Because what most retailers, I think, will tell you, if somebody's going to return it, it comes back within 2 weeks. And that can be quite a long tail, but the vast majority come back within the first 2 weeks. So Marks & Spencer's reduced it, I don't know if it's 4 weeks or 6 weeks or something like that, so it didn't affect anything. And we had a workshop very quickly after it with a couple of other major retailers were present, and what they said was they couldn't believe that they'd done it. because of this reality of it'll come back in 2 weeks, or probably not at all. Why change something when it's not actually going to actually affect the number of things that you get back through the system? But what it does do, it gives you that nice warm fuzzy feeling, doesn't it? That I can confidently buy from this organisation because they say I can return it for quite a long period. I think on your other comment about legislation, one of the things as well that I think customers are becoming more savvy, and you actually get a better return by law if you return it, if you buy online than if you buy in the shop, because you get the guarantee that you can take it back. Is it 2 weeks? You get that guaranteed in law. So we're also, I think, as customers become more savvy, they're obviously taking advantage of, well, not taking advantage, they're just using the law as it's been written.
Thank you very much. We've got another session starting within the next 5 minutes, so we're going to have to wrap this one up. So thank you very much for your time and listening attentively, and just perhaps one last round of applause for Jonathan for his speech. Thank you.